What if everything you see, the stars above you, the ground beneath your feet, even your own thoughts, are not base reality? Scientists call it simulation theory, the idea that the universe may be an artificial construct governed by rules written somewhere beyond space and time. But here's the unsettling question. What if this idea isn't new? What if a worldview from 1400 years ago already described reality as temporary, structured, and purpose-driven? Not as a game, not as an illusion, but as a test. This video is not about science fiction. It's about the deepest question humanity has ever asked. What is reality, and why does it exist at all? For most of human history, the question was simple. What is the universe made of? Stone, fire, water, air, atoms, energy. Every civilization tried to answer it using the tools it had. But in the modern age, a far more unsettling question has emerged. One that no longer asks what reality is made of, but whether reality itself is fundamentally real. This question is known today as simulation theory, the idea that the universe may be an artificial construct generated by an intelligence beyond it. The theory did not arise from religion, mysticism, or ancient mythology. It emerged from mathematics, computer science, and physics. As humans began creating digital worlds, games, simulations, artificial intelligence, a disturbing thought surfaced. If intelligent beings can create simulated realities, then statistically, it becomes more likely that any conscious observer exists inside a simulation rather than a base reality. What once sounded like science fiction began to appear as a serious philosophical possibility discussed by physicists, philosophers, and technologists. Yet this idea, shocking to the modern secular mind, is not new in its essence. Long before computers, before code, before digital logic, Islam presented a worldview that described reality as created, structured, sustained, temporary, and purpose-driven. Islam never framed existence as self-sufficient or accidental. Instead, it asserted something far more radical, that the universe is not only created, but continuously maintained by a will beyond it. At first glance, simulation theory seems to challenge religion, but upon deeper examination, it challenges something else entirely: materialism. The belief that matter is all that exists, that reality is self-running, and that consciousness is an accident of chemistry. Islam never accepted these assumptions to begin with. As a result, the Islamic worldview does not collapse under simulation theory. Instead, it absorbs it, critiques it, and places it within a much larger metaphysical framework. Islam begins with a foundational claim that existence is divided into two categories: necessary existence and contingent existence. The universe belongs to the second category. It does not exist by necessity. It could have been otherwise or not existed at all. Anything that can change, decay, expand, or end cannot be self-existent. The Quran repeatedly draws attention to this dependency, not as poetry, but as a logical argument for reflection. When simulation theory says that reality may be generated by external rules, Islam responds by stating that all rules are imposed, not emergent. The laws of physics are not creators. They are instructions. They do not explain why something exists rather than nothing. They describe how something behaves after it exists. Islam asserts that behind every consistent pattern lies intentional command, and behind every command lies authority. This is why the Quran does not describe the universe as running on its own. It describes it as being actively upheld. Stars do not simply burn. They are restrained from collapse. Orbits do not randomly stabilize. They are maintained. Time does not merely flow. It progresses by decree. The universe, according to Islam, is not a machine left unattended. It is a system under constant governance. Simulation theory often unsettles people because it implies meaninglessness. If reality is a simulation, then life might be a game, consciousness an illusion, and morality a side effect of programming. Islam directly confronts this fear. It acknowledges that this world is temporary and not ultimate, but it never calls it meaningless. On the contrary, it insists that temporary environments are precisely where testing and meaning occur. In Islamic thought, the world is not fake, but it is not final. It is real in function, consequence, and responsibility, yet limited in duration. This distinction is crucial. A test environment is not false simply because it ends. A classroom is not unreal because students eventually leave it. Meaning is not derived from permanence, but from purpose. The Quran repeatedly challenges humans to consider whether they believe they were created without intent, without accountability, without outcome. This challenge mirrors the existential discomfort that simulation theory creates in secular philosophy. But where modern thought often stops at uncertainty, Islam moves forward with clarity. Existence is intentional, consciousness is meaningful, and reality is morally charged. Another critical difference lies in the nature of the creator. Simulation theory imagines a simulator who is part of a higher universe, bound by computation, resources, and trial-and-error design. Islam categorically rejects this notion. The creator described in Islam is not an advanced being inside another system. He is not learning, experimenting, or evolving. He is not constrained by time, space, or material limits. This distinction prevents Islam from falling into an infinite regress. Simulation theory cannot explain who created the simulator or the universe in which the simulator exists. Islam resolves this by asserting the existence of a necessary being, one whose existence does not depend on anything else. This being is not part of the system. The system exists because of him. In this sense, Islam does not deny the intuition behind simulation theory. It corrects it. It agrees that reality appears designed, structured, rule-based, and contingent. But it refuses to stop at a finite explanation. Instead of a programmer, Islam speaks of an absolute source of existence itself. Thus, the question shifts. It is no longer, are we living in a simulation? The deeper question becomes, why does reality behave as if it is contingent, governed, and temporary? Islam answers this not with speculation, but with a comprehensive worldview that integrates physics, consciousness, morality, and destiny into a single coherent structure. At the heart of simulation theory lies a powerful intuition that the universe behaves less like a wild accident and more like a carefully written program. Physical constants remain astonishingly stable. Mathematical relationships describe reality with uncanny precision, and the universe appears to run on rules that never question themselves. To many modern thinkers, this resemblance to code is not metaphorical. It feels literal. If everything obeys fixed instructions, then perhaps those instructions were written. Islam does not deny this observation. In fact, it starts from it. The Quran repeatedly directs human attention toward the consistency and order of the cosmos, not as a coincidence, but as evidence of deliberate regulation. The regularity of natural law is not treated as something that explains itself. Instead, it is presented as something that demands explanation. Order is not neutral. It is meaningful. Where simulation theory describes these regularities as code, Islam describes them as command. This difference is subtle but profound. Code, in a modern sense, implies an impersonal system that runs automatically once written. Command, in Islamic theology, implies active authority and continuous intention. The universe does not merely obey because it must, it obeys because it is instructed to. This distinction becomes clear when Islam addresses the idea of causality. In modern physics, causes are treated as self-sufficient. One event triggers another according to immutable laws. Islam challenges this assumption. It argues that causes do not possess independent power. Fire does not burn by itself. Gravity does not pull by itself. These forces operate because they are allowed to operate. Their consistency is not proof of autonomy, but proof of permission. This is why Islamic theology can account for both regularity and exception. Simulation theory struggles with anomalies, events that appear to violate the expected behavior of the system. In a programmed universe, exceptions suggest either bugs or external interference. Islam resolves this by asserting that what humans call laws of nature are actually habits of creation. They reflect what usually happens, not what must happen. Miracles, then, are not violations of law. They are suspensions of habit. If the universe runs by command rather than blind mechanism, then altering outcomes does not break reality. It simply reveals who governs it. This preserves logical coherence without requiring reality to be chaotic or unpredictable. Stability is the norm, not the prison. Simulation theory also implies that the universe could be paused, reset, or terminated by the simulator. Islam explicitly affirms this idea, but without technological metaphors. The Quran speaks of the universe having a beginning and an end, of time itself being folded, of the heavens being rolled up like a scroll. These are not poetic flourishes. They're assertions that existence is finite and controlled. However, Islam refuses to describe this control as computational. There is no processing limit, no storage constraint, no energy cost. The Creator does not calculate possibilities or simulate outcomes to decide what will happen. Knowledge in Islam is not predictive. It is absolute. Everything that occurs does so not because it was computed as optimal, but because it was willed. This answers one of the deepest problems in simulation theory: why the universe exists at all. A simulation exists for a reason: entertainment, research, curiosity. Islam goes further. It states that existence itself is meaningful, and that the universe exists not as an experiment, but as a stage for moral agency. Reality is not a sandbox. It is a test. The idea that laws are commanded rather than coded also reshapes the concept of determinism. Simulation theory often leads to fatalism. If everything is programmed, then every action is inevitable. Islam avoids this trap by separating knowledge from coercion. The Creator knows what will happen, but knowledge does not force action. Awareness of an outcome does not cause the outcome. This is why moral responsibility remains intact in Islam. Humans are not executing lines of script. They are choosing within a framework of constraints. The environment is structured, but agency is real. Just as a game with rules still allows meaningful choices, the universe's order does not negate freedom. It enables it. Islamic thought also challenges the assumption that mathematical elegance implies artificiality. Modern thinkers often argue that the universe is too mathematical to be natural. Islam responds by asking a different question. Why should nature be chaotic? Why assume that order requires artificiality rather than intelligence? Mathematics, in Islam, is not an external language imposed on reality. It is a human discovery of patterns already embedded in creation. This leads to a crucial realization. Simulation theory sees the universe as resembling a computer because humans now understand computers. Islam reminds us that humans design computers by observing the universe, not the other way around. Digital logic mirrors cosmic order because human intellect is itself a product of that order. The resemblance is reversed. Ultimately, Islam reframes the entire debate. The universe does not behave like a simulation because it is fake. It behaves like a simulation because it is governed. It is structured because it is intentional. It is stable because stability serves purpose. And it is finite because infinity belongs only to the Creator. Thus, the laws of physics do not reduce reality to an illusion. They elevate it into a sign. Every equation, every constant, every predictable pattern becomes a pointer, not to code, but to command, not to machinery, but to meaning. And once this is understood, the next question becomes unavoidable. If the universe is structured and governed, what about the beings inside it? Are humans merely conscious observers trapped in a system, or are they something more? That question leads directly to the heart of the matter: free will, consciousness, and moral responsibility. One of the most unsettling implications of simulation theory is not technological, but existential. If reality is simulated, then consciousness itself becomes suspicious. Are human thoughts genuine experiences, or are they merely outputs generated by an underlying system? Are emotions authentic, or are they illusions produced by complex algorithms? And most importantly, if everything unfolds within a programmed environment, can free will truly exist at all? Islam confronts these questions directly, long before the language of algorithms ever existed. It does not treat consciousness as an accidental byproduct of matter, nor does it reduce awareness to electrical impulses arranged in the right pattern. Instead, Islam introduces consciousness as something deliberately placed within the human being, something that cannot be explained by physical structure alone. The Quran describes the human form as being shaped first and then infused with something beyond material composition, an element that gives awareness, moral perception, and inner experience. This distinction is critical. Simulation theory often assumes that if consciousness can arise from complex computation, then it is fundamentally reducible to it. Islam rejects this reduction. While the body operates according to physical laws, consciousness is not bound by them in the same way. Thoughts have no mass. Intentions have no location. Moral awareness cannot be weighed or measured. These are not glitches in a system. They are indicators that reality contains layers beyond the physical. The presence of consciousness creates a problem for strict determinism. A purely programmed system cannot produce genuine choice. It can only produce the appearance of choice. Islam does not accept appearances as sufficient. Moral accountability, which sits at the heart of Islamic theology, requires real alternatives and real decision-making. A test cannot be meaningful if the outcome is already forced. To address this, Islam makes a careful distinction between structure and agency. The universe provides constraints. Time flows in one direction. Gravity pulls downward. Bodies age and decay. But within these constraints, humans are given the capacity to choose. Choice does not require unlimited freedom. It requires meaningful freedom. The ability to intend, to resist, to comply, and to reflect is enough. Simulation theory often collapses this distinction. It assumes that if the environment is programmed, then the agents within it must also be programmed. Islam denies this leap. It argues that the environment can be fully controlled without reducing the participants to puppets. Just as a teacher can control the exam conditions without dictating the student's answers, the creator can govern reality without erasing free will. Another fear raised by simulation theory is the idea of surveillance. If a simulator exists, then every action might be observed, logged, and analyzed. To the modern mind, this feels invasive and dehumanizing. Islam openly affirms complete awareness, but reframes it morally rather than technologically. Nothing is hidden, not because humans are data points, but because accountability is inseparable from justice. This awareness does not negate freedom, it gives it weight. Actions matter because they are known. Choices have consequences because they are witnessed. In Islam, moral significance arises not from anonymity, but from recognition. A deed unseen by all creation still matters, because it is not unseen by the source of existence itself. Islam also addresses the fear that humans might be insignificant characters in an incomprehensible system. Simulation theory often implies that individual lives are negligible, easily discarded or reset. Islam takes the opposite position. It asserts that the human being holds a unique status within creation, not because of physical strength or intelligence, but because of moral capacity. The ability to choose between right and wrong elevates human existence beyond mere functionality. This is why Islam does not describe humans as components of a system, but as trustees within it. The universe is not something humans own or control absolutely, but it is something they are responsible for. Responsibility implies dignity. It implies trust. It implies that human actions have real impact beyond the immediate moment. Another key difference lies in how future outcomes are understood. Simulation theory often imagines branching possibilities calculated in advance. Islam presents a more nuanced view. The future is known, but not imposed. Knowledge does not function as a script. It functions as awareness. Just as knowing how a story ends does not force the characters to act a certain way, divine knowledge does not coerce human choice. This preserves a delicate balance. Humans are neither sovereign creators of their fate nor helpless products of circumstance. They exist in a tension between limitation and freedom. Islam does not attempt to eliminate this tension. It embraces it. Meaning arises precisely because choice exists within constraint. Consciousness, in this framework, is not an accident of complexity. It is the very reason the universe exists in its current form. Without conscious beings capable of moral response, a structured universe would be purposeless. Simulation theory struggles to explain why a simulator would create suffering, uncertainty, and moral struggle. Islam answers this by defining life as a trial, one that cannot exist without difficulty. This does not trivialize pain or injustice. It contextualizes them. Struggle is not evidence of randomness or indifference. It is evidence of a system designed to test values rather than comfort. A world without risk would be a world without moral depth. By the end of this reasoning, the image of humans as non-player characters collapses. Islam insists that humans are not running scripts. They are making choices. They are accountable. And they are meaningful, not despite the structure of reality, but because of it. This leads to the next and perhaps most misunderstood idea. If this world is structured, temporary, and morally charged, then what exactly is its role? Is it an illusion, a deception, or something else entirely? To answer that, we must examine how Islam understands this life itself, not as a simulation, but as a test environment with real stakes. One of the most common misunderstandings arises when Islam describes this world as temporary, deceptive, or fleeting. These words are often misinterpreted through a modern lens, especially when compared to simulation theory. If the world is temporary, some assume it must be false. If it is deceptive, they assume it must be unreal. Islam rejects both conclusions. Temporariness does not imply illusion, and limitation does not imply meaninglessness. Islam introduces the concept of dunya as a stage of existence with a specific function. It is not the final reality, but it is a real one. Its purpose is not to provide ultimate fulfillment, but to provide conditions for moral choice. A test environment is not fake. It is simply not permanent. Its value lies not in how long it lasts, but in what it reveals about those who pass through it. Simulation theory often frames reality as something potentially trivial, like a game that can be shut down without consequence. Islam draws a sharp distinction here. While the world may resemble a testing ground, the outcomes are not temporary. Decisions made within this environment echo beyond it. This gives weight to every action, no matter how small or hidden. The Quran repeatedly emphasizes that life's attractions, wealth, power, pleasure, status, are not evil in themselves, but dangerous when mistaken for permanence. The deception of dunya is not that it is unreal, but that it convinces humans it is all there is. When the temporary is treated as ultimate, values collapse. When the means are mistaken for the end, meaning dissolves. In this sense, Islam offers a far more sophisticated critique of reality than simulation theory. Simulation theory destabilizes meaning by suggesting that existence may be artificial. Islam stabilizes meaning by asserting that artificiality is irrelevant. Whether temporary or eternal, what matters is responsibility. A short test can be more significant than an endless one. Another crucial difference lies in suffering. In a simulated universe, suffering feels pointless, even cruel. Why would a simulator allow pain? Islam confronts this question head-on. It does not deny suffering or dismiss it as a bug. It frames suffering as an inevitable consequence of a world designed for moral growth rather than comfort. A world without suffering would be a world without courage, patience, compassion, or justice. This does not mean that Islam glorifies pain. It acknowledges suffering as something to be resisted, alleviated, and opposed. but it also insists that suffering has context. Hardship exposes character. Ease tests gratitude. Power tests restraint. Poverty tests patience. Every condition becomes meaningful because it is not random. Simulation theory struggles with moral realism. If the universe is a constructed environment with no intrinsic purpose, then moral values become subjective preferences coded into human psychology. Islam rejects this entirely. It asserts that morality is objective because it originates from the same source that created existence itself. Right and wrong are not human inventions. They are discoveries. This is why Islam describes life as an examination without revealing the questions in advance. Humans are placed in unpredictable circumstances precisely so that their responses reflect their values. If outcomes were obvious, virtue would be performative rather than genuine. Ambiguity is not a flaw, it is a feature. The idea that life is a test also explains why absolute justice is not fully realized here. Simulation theory often raises the problem of injustice as evidence that reality lacks design. Islam sees injustice as evidence that this world is not the final court. If justice were perfectly enforced here, there would be no need for accountability beyond it. The presence of unresolved injustice points toward continuation, not chaos. Another profound contrast lies in the treatment of death. In simulation theory, death might be interpreted as deletion or disconnection. Islam frames death as transition. The end of this phase does not negate the reality of the experience. It completes it. Just as finishing an exam does not erase the effort invested, leaving this world does not nullify the choices made within it. Islam also addresses the psychological effect of believing life is merely a simulation. Such belief often leads to detachment, nihilism, or moral disengagement. Islam counters this by grounding meaning in consequence rather than permanence. The world may pass, but responsibility does not. The temporary nature of life intensifies its seriousness rather than diminishing it. The Quran frequently urges reflection on how quickly life moves, not to induce despair, but to sharpen awareness. Urgency creates focus. Knowing that time is limited forces humans to confront what truly matters. Endless duration breeds procrastination. Finite opportunity demands intention. In this framework, dunya is not a trap designed to deceive intelligent beings. It is a deliberate environment designed to reveal them. Nothing about it is random. Its instability is purposeful. Its imperfection is instructive. Its beauty is motivating. Its pain is refining. Once this is understood, simulation theory loses its existential threat. Even if reality were layered, even if existence were not base level, the Islamic model would remain intact. Meaning does not collapse when reality is temporary. It collapses only when reality is purposeless. And Islam is uncompromising on this point. Existence has purpose. This realization leads to the final question. If Islam can absorb the insights of simulation theory while avoiding its contradictions, then what exactly does Islam offer that simulation theory cannot? The answer lies in the concept of ultimate explanation, something simulation theory perpetually defers but Islam decisively provides. Simulation theory presents itself as a revolutionary idea, but in truth is a stopping point rather than an explanation. It moves the mystery of existence one level higher, but it never resolves it. If reality is a simulation, then who built it? If a simulator exists, then what universe does that simulator inhabit? And if that universe is also structured and rule-based, then the question repeats endlessly. Simulation theory does not eliminate the need for an ultimate cause. It postpones it. Islam refuses to postpone the question. It confronts it directly by introducing the concept of a necessary being, an existence that does not depend on anything else, that does not begin, does not end, and does not require an external explanation. This is not a theological escape. It is a logical necessity. Without a self-existent foundation, reality collapses into infinite regress. where nothing is ever fully explained. Where simulation theory imagines a powerful but finite creator, Islam describes an absolute source of existence itself. The creator in Islam is not inside a higher system, not constrained by time, not limited by energy, and not experimenting with outcomes. He does not discover reality, he originates it. This distinction matters because it transforms the nature of existence from accidental construction to intentional creation. Another limitation of simulation theory is that it cannot justify why anything matters. Even if a simulator exists, nothing within the simulation possesses intrinsic value unless the simulator assigns it, and even then, that value remains arbitrary. Islam resolves this by rooting value in the nature of existence itself. Life matters because it is intentionally created. Choices matter because they are morally weighted. Actions matter because they are accountable. Simulation theory also cannot explain moral obligation. If reality is artificial, why should anyone care about justice, sacrifice, or truth? At best, these become survival strategies or social preferences. Islam grounds morality in something unchanging. Right and wrong are not negotiated by cultures or rewritten by power. They flow from the same source that gave existence its order. One of the most powerful insights Islam offers is that knowledge does not eliminate freedom. Simulation theory often assumes that complete knowledge implies control. Islam separates the two. Knowing what will happen does not force it to happen. Awareness is not coercion. This preserves both divine omniscience and human responsibility without contradiction. Islam also answers the emotional crisis created by simulation theory. When people begin to suspect that reality might be artificial, they often feel small, disposable, and insignificant. Islam offers the opposite conclusion. It asserts that human beings are not accidental observers in a cosmic experiment. They are deliberate participants in a moral narrative. Their lives are not fillers. They are central. This worldview restores dignity. Every struggle, every intention, every hidden act becomes meaningful. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is unseen. Nothing is arbitrary. Even suffering, which simulation theory cannot morally justify, becomes intelligible within a framework of testing, growth, and ultimate justice. Perhaps the most decisive difference is that Islam does not fear scientific advancement. It does not panic when reality begins to look designed. It does not retreat when physics reveals structure. It welcomes these discoveries because it never claimed the universe was random or self-existing. The more ordered reality appears, the more coherent the Islamic worldview becomes. In this sense, simulation theory unintentionally supports Islamic metaphysics. It undermines materialism without offering a replacement. Islam provides that replacement. It accepts the intuition that reality is contingent, but it completes the argument by grounding contingency in necessity. The final realization is simple yet profound. Simulation theory asks, what if this is not base reality? Islam asks, why assume base reality must look the way you expect? If existence behaves like it is governed, purposeful, and temporary, then perhaps that is because it is. Islam does not claim that the universe is a simulation. It claims something deeper, that the universe is a sign.